and welcome to Imperial Cantina, the show where we sit down with a guest, have some drinks, and talk about Star Wars one movie at a time. I'm your host, Braydon Leadbetter.
And I'm your co-host, Jackson Daleen. How's it going?
It's going good, Jackson. You know why?
Why?
Because we have a very special guest today, and I'm very excited to have my very good friend. You know him from the notsoextremegaming YouTube channel and podcast and everything to do with Not So Extreme Gaming. We have Brandon Sears today. Brandon, how are you doing?
Hello, I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
We're doing well. It's about time you came on the show.
Dude, I know. I feel like it's been a long time coming.
Yeah, so this is kind of something we start out all of our guests asking, but what have you been up to in the realm of Star Wars recently? What have you been watching, playing, reading, anything?
Okay, so watching-wise, I've actually been watching the Clone Wars in a certain order.
What's the order? Chronological?
Okay. No, it's not exactly chronological. It's more obscure because if you actually watch it, it jumps from place to place. So this kind of puts it more in perspective anyway, or at least how I would say it is. It puts it more in perspective.
Mm-hmm.
God, I'm trying to think of the best way to say it. So some of the seasons will like jump to one planet and then jump back to another, and then it gets really out of place. But if you watch it, yeah. So like if you've kind of noticed that, so like the first episode that you watch is like season 2, episode 16, and then you watch season 1, episode 16, and then you watch the Clone Wars movie. So it all kind of meshes together.
Okay.
And then Clone Wars introduces Ahsoka, and then it just goes from there. So like then you go to season 3 for like episodes 1 and then 3, and then you do season 1, episode 115. So there's a whole list all the way down to season 6.
So it just goes by planet and like keeping you kind of grounded and...
Not exactly just by planet, because it has a more linear storyline. So it'll kind of call back and be like, oh, well, this just happened here.
Okay, so it's kind of like the Clone Wars machete order.
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, very much so.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
But that's what I've been watching. As for what I've been doing more so, I actually had the opportunity to go to Hollywood Studios at Disney and go to their like Star Wars land.
Oh, heck.
That's
yeah.
awesome.
Galaxy's Edge. Yeah.
So it was amazing. Galaxy's Edge was so
I saw some
cool.
of your Snapchat stories. It looked so cool. I'm still yet to go, but...
Dude, I didn't want to spoil anything, but there's like still some things that the ride, man, Rise of Rebellion.
Oh, you wrote it? Yeah.
Oh my God, it was amazing.
I bet.
Like, I honestly felt like I was just in the movie.
Did you do Smuggler's Run?
I would say, did you fly the Falcon?
So I didn't do Smuggler's Run, mainly because with COVID going on and everything, it's been kind of a weird like way to do things. They have an actual cantina there too, but luckily since my sister's been working for Disney, hopefully when I go visit her, we'll be able to go back and actually like reserve spots for things.
I was going to say, you didn't get a chance to try blue milk or anything?
So I wanted to, and they had a line for it, but when I was talking to my sister, she was just kind of like, it's really not worth the wait.
Okay.
I've heard it's just kind of sugary. I've heard it's very... Yeah, just kind of like a slushy drink.
Something you don't want on a hot day. Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly. I know eventually I will get it just for the fun of it.
Yeah.
But at the time I was like, okay, well, COVID, everything else, we're trying to bounce around and do whatever else. I might as well just kind of like hold off and we can do it another time.
Well, cool. Did you make any fun purchases?
I didn't make any fun purchases, but
no lightsaber.
The one thing, no, I did not. Man, those are so expensive.
Yeah, they are.
But the hilts, man, the stores there, and just being able to see them are so cool.
Yeah.
The one thing that I actually really, really wanted, which I think I will get the next time I'm there, because I'll be more prepared to make that purchase, is I'm gonna get Jedi robes and Jedi clothes.
Nice. The whole cosplay getup.
Oh, I'm gonna do the whole thing. I mean, I pretty much have everything I need for like a Harry Potter Gryffindor person
from Universal.
And exactly, so I want to go over and do the same thing. And I'm like, man, I pretty much just have a Halloween costume whenever I want it.
There
and it's
you go,
just a fun thing to be like, hey, man, Star Wars Day, like we're getting with it.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's off the top of my head, that's pretty much what I've been up to, at least Star Wars related. Oh, and when we played Lego Star Wars.
Yeah, like it was like almost 2 months ago. Right?
Yeah,
right?
no, like a month ago.
It took a while for those episodes to release because we were waiting for this moment.
Well, yeah, we recorded them early, but I wanted to release them around the time that this was coming out.
Yeah. If you're listening and you didn't know, I guest on the Not So Extreme Gaming channel, and we play a little bit of Lego Star Wars, and we have some great Star Wars conversations over there about some things that we probably won't discuss here. So if you want to check that out, you can check out Not So Extreme Gaming. We will plug those plugs at the end of the show. But Brandon, I have another question for you. What do you think was your initial introduction to Star Wars in general? Just what introduced you to the galaxy?
So, it's kind of silly, but what actually introduced me to Star Wars was my grandmother. When I was younger, we used to go over to her house, and my parents would drop us off there before school or something, or like on like weekends. That way they could go to work and she could kind of like babysit us. It was early in the morning. Our dad dropped us off, and she was like, "Do you guys want to watch something?" And we're like, "Yeah, well, we'll fall asleep to a movie." Well, she put on The Great Ewok Adventure.
Nice.
So that was my first introduction.
I love that.
Was The Great Ewok Adventure and The Caravan of Courage, I believe.
And perfect timing because
I was just gonna say, yeah.
Today is the day that all of that just got released onto Disney Plus.
Dude, I know. But so that was my introduction, and then I loved it so much, and she was like, "Well, if you guys like that, like here, let's watch like the new prequel stuff." So watch Phantom Menace, and everything started coming out at that point. Mm-hmm. And then for Christmas one year, because I was so into it, my grandma was like, "Well, here's the DVD set of episodes 4, 5, and 6." So binge watched all of that. Yeah. And that's pretty much my whole introduction to Star Wars was my grandmother.
So your introduction, like a lot of people from our generation, was not the prequels.
No, it was something completely unrelated.
Yeah,
it was the weird mad scientist stuff that they made.
That's awesome. I love that. What did you think of? I have not seen the Ewok movies yet. I plan on watching them now that they're out. But what do you think of like the Ewok movies, and what made? Was it the Ewok movies that made you fall in love with Star Wars, or was it not until you watched the original trilogy that you fell in love with Star Wars?
So, geez, when I fell in love with Star Wars, wow, that's such a loaded question.
Like what is it? Basically, what I'm asking is, what is it that made you love Star Wars so much? Like, what do you love about Star Wars?
I think just the fact that it's possible. It sounds kind of crazy.
Yeah,
but
no, I know what you mean. Yeah.
There's, when you think about like space and things that are way out in the world, or in the universe, sorry, it cannot just be as linear as, hey, we're the only living things.
Right.
And in my head, if that's the case, like space travel could be invented somewhere else. And the more you think about it here, a lot of movies and books are the things that influence future technology. Mm-hmm. So I guess the thing that I really fell in love with was just the aspect of it could be out there. Like all of it could be out there. The
slim possibility that maybe. Yeah.
George Lucas is just a guy who like got out of it and ended up on our planet and was like, I gotta tell somebody about this.
George Lucas is from an entirely different simulation. Yeah.
Built
it's not even
different.
He's built different.
He just took a flash drive out and plugged himself in. He's I'm gonna go here.
I think that's kind of the importance of the opening of every Star Wars movie being a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, because it doesn't create that sense of disconnect from the viewer of, if this was supposed to happen kind of like present day in another galaxy, like I get it. But the fact that it almost fills you with this sense of belief and this sense of, mm-hmm. Oh my God, this actually could have happened somewhere that I don't know about,
And like, side note, another reason, man, lightsabers are just fucking cool.
Oh,
like, all of it's so cool.
Yeah.
Just like I said, just the concept of everything and just even the story.
Yeah, and we talked about this a little bit on your podcast. Just the concept of space wizards. I mean, come on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It like, who'd have thought, like, I don't even have to say a spell. It's just like, poof, and I have a fucking sword. Like, and it just lights up. It's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Well, kind of moving on here. What do you think is your favorite Star Wars movie?
Well, don't really have to think because you asked me straight up before we did any of this. And you're like, what is your favorite movie? And it is definitely Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, which is perfect timing because you're here right now about to talk about Revenge of the Sith.
Exactly. No, oh my God, it's such a favorite. Like, I know a lot of people are like, oh, the prequels, but like, there's so much into it, and especially after watching, and no, my opinion used to be different, but after watching the Clone Wars and watching the new season, just the story and everything else, like you look back and you start like bouncing back and forth between that last season and Revenge of the Sith, and it's like, I can't believe all this is happening at the same time.
There's just so much to it. Yeah. Jackson, we'll kind of jump to you for a second. What is it about, Revenge of the Sith and this kind of very, this moment in Star Wars is very, it's a turning point in the entire saga. What is it about Revenge of the Sith that you love so much?
I've always been a big Revenge of the Sith person, and I didn't watch Clone Wars until I guess 2 years ago. I started it 2 years ago. For me, Revenge of the Sith is the prequels George Lucas wanted.
Yeah.
He gave us all of this backstory prior that was kind of just like setting up for this initial moment that he wanted to tell. This is the magnum opus of what he was trying to create with all of the previous movies, and it's got everything that it needs in it. I don't think it's really missing a lot. I think George is able to kind of compact everything in this 2.5 hour movie, and it flows to a point that it's at least better than the other ones.
Yeah, I do agree. I think Revenge of the Sith is just the Star Wars movie.
Ride.
It's a ride.
It really is.
And it's also the Star Wars movie that whenever I was a kid, that I connected the most with. And there's so much that, we'll get into this later, but there's so much that happens in it. And there's so much that I, for lack of a better term, there's so much that I connect with this movie. But kind of before we get into the guts of Revenge of the Sith, there's a couple more questions I do want to ask Brandon before we get into that. One more thing. This is kind of almost like picking your favorite child. But what is your favorite Star Wars character?
Oh yeah, see that's a big one.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, when you think about it, like so many different names just run through your head right away.
Yeah.
But I'd have to say, and I think we talked about this on my show too for the Not So Extreme guests. But man, Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
Absolutely love Obi-Wan as a character, and through Clone Wars and Rebels and just the movies, and like, oh dude, Ewan McGregor.
Now, are there certain aspects of Obi-Wan that you kind of connect and relate with that makes you like him so much?
Actually, yes. I would have to say, and like, I feel like I'm boasting about myself when I say it like this, and I don't mean to be like that, but just how unwavering he is about like who he is as a person.
Yeah.
Because no matter what happens throughout the entire thing, he stays true to his beliefs.
He sticks to his guns. Yeah.
It's always, and there's so many things that he could have just turned tail and said, screw it, I'm not going to worry about this. And he could have just done his own thing.
And he's loyal too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like, I honestly feel that if, let's say like A New Hope, just for like, just this topic for reference.
Yeah.
Let's say in A New Hope, he never got like struck down and turned into a Force ghost, and he was still alive throughout the whole thing. I think at any point, if Vader were to have turned back into Anakin, he would have been right there and just welcomed him open arms like a brother again.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Jackson, what do you kind of think about? Do you think that would be Obi-Wan's initial reaction if, if at the end when Vader did turn, he was still alive? Do you think that would kind of be Obi-Wan's reaction?
Of just, yeah.
That kind of unconditional love aspect.
That it doesn't matter what you did. Like, y'all always be here.
Yeah. Do you think that would be Obi-Wan's initial reaction if Anakin was back? Is basically what I'm saying.
Yeah, Obi-Wan would give everything he could to just be there for Anakin to help him just keep himself grounded.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of the time it's so hard because Obi-Wan, I can't help but think that he blames himself for everything that happened with Anakin and that he failed as a master, and how much weight that puts on him. Especially, I think we'll see that a lot going into the Kenobi series for sure. But yeah, I think that's a great take, Brandon. I do love Kenobi a lot too. But last question before we get into the Sith talk.
Hold on, can I just intervene real quick?
You absolutely can. Go for it.
Another favorite character, although not like human or alien related, dude, R2D2, motherfucker is a ride or die.
Yeah.
He knew everything.
We are R2 stands here, trust me.
But I had to get that out.
Yeah, R2 and 3PO, almost every episode of Cantina, we have a whole segment dedicated to R2 and 3PO's importance to the Star Wars saga. But cool, yeah, one last question I want to ask you. What is your most anticipated Star Wars project coming out in the future? What's excites you the most?
Oh gosh. Well, there's the Kenobi series.
Of course. Yeah.
That and the Bad Batch.
Bad Batch. So you're a Clone Wars guy.
Yes. I honestly, when I started watching Clone Wars and when I finished it, when they dropped the new season, it was instantly I started watching it. And then when I kind of realized that they dropped that like new way to watch it, I'm like, I have to.
Yeah.
So I started doing that, and I think I'm like halfway done with it. But the Bad Batch is just such a big thing, and I've seen the trailers for it, and it's during that time when like Vader takes over, and it's just like 5 clones.
Yeah.
Like that's amazing to me. Like just the fact that it's still like that cartoonish style, I think is what really makes it really well, because they just have to find the voice actors. Like they can do the animation, they can do everything else, and I know it'll be good if it's anything like Clone Wars. Yeah,
for sure. That was one of the things. That was one of the Star Wars projects coming out that I was kind of iffy on. Mostly because I still haven't completely finished the entire series of Clone Wars. And the trailer was a little underwhelming for me. The first one. The new trailer I'm kind of pumped for. Like that makes the show. It makes it feel so much more intricate, and it lets you get to know a lot more of the characters. You know, Fennec Shan's in there, and you have this new Omega character. But yeah, I've become a lot more enthusiastic about the Bad Batch in the past couple weeks, even. So that's one that I'm kind of excited for too. I know that I'm also very excited for The Acolyte. What are your kind of thoughts on that show?
I'll be honest with you, I have not heard much about that, so please enlighten me.
So it's basically this. They haven't really given us much, but we know it happens just after the events of the High Republic, and it is going to be kind of Sith-centric, dark side-centric, and I think they've confirmed that it's going to be female-led. That's about all we know. Okay, so is it kind of like a... I don't mean to compare, but like a Forced Unleashed kind of character, where like Sith side cool. Like Apprentice. Yeah, there's no. They haven't released a vibe check.
Okay.
On these characters yet.
Well, see, that's the best way to put it. But that's still really exciting to me, though, and my thoughts on that are actually very high, and I'm super enthusiastic about that, and I want to see that. Because you don't see much from the Sith side until you get into things like Clone Wars or Rebels. You see nothing from the Sith side in all the movies, except like maybe a handful of scenes.
Yeah.
Just personally, anyway.
Yeah. And, there's a handful of shows that we're both excited about, like the Ahsoka show for sure.
I'm excited about that.
And we got Mandalorian season 3, all those goodies coming at us soon, very, very soon. But I think it's time to dive deep and get into Revenge of the Sith. The reason why everybody's here listening. Brandon, you being the guest, we'll start with you. What are your overall... I know you kind of went into this a little bit earlier, but what are your overall thoughts in reaction? Just what is your big picture reaction to Revenge of the Sith?
It's absolutely amazing. Visually stunning to watch.
Yeah.
And again, just the story of how they put everything together. It's absolutely phenomenal. I mean, a lot of people rag on it, I guess, because there's just some parts where people are like, oh, wow, I can't believe they just did that. But
yeah, I would argue that recently a lot of people have grown to appreciate this movie and appreciate what it does for the saga.
It's turned more into like a nostalgic meme that like the poking fun of it is more of kind of like the cheesy dialogue and like more of like it's like like the concepts and like the ideas of what this movie like achieves are really awesome, but like when executed, George Lucas is like, you hit the ball but it didn't go very far.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, and I think the biggest thing is, I won't say recently, but it was quite recently that they released the newest season of Clone Wars, which again was happening like at the very end. It was happening during the events of this movie. So people kind of look back and they're like, oh, wait, I can kind of see this now. And they're kind of realizing like they're getting more context because, you can only pack so much into a movie. And as opposed to a book or novel or comic, whatever. Mm-hmm. So I think now that people are watching all that, they're going back and realizing that. And plus, people give a lot of hate to the sequels. Yeah. And it's bringing people back to the prequels. And they're like, you know what? These weren't so bad. But, nothing's bad in general.
That's kind of our view. Like, Star Wars in general is just something we love. Like, there is no... I think, at least to me, personally... I think trying to separate it between the prequels, original trilogy, sequels, shows, animated, any of that, I think that's kind of counterintuitive because when you think about it, Star Wars is just one big story and one big saga as a whole. It's not just, something that has to be picked apart and something that you have to nitpick because if you do that, you're only going to find things you don't like. If you just look at Star Wars as a whole... I think you will find a lot more enjoyment and a lot more appreciation for just the messages that Lucas the entire time has been trying to bring across. So I think that's super important too.
Well, and you're absolutely right. It's one big story. Like I've said this constantly. If I could mash every single movie in a timeline order and just watch it straight, I would.
Yeah,
and
of course.
Between the shows and movies and everything, if I could just mash it all into one, I would do it. I mean,
including the Ewok adventures.
Oh no, seriously, wherever that happens in the timeline, though, I would do it. I seriously would
sure.
Because it's all just one big story. Like it's like you said, it's all happening either at the same time or somewhere within that. Like you just have no idea. I mean, again, I keep going back to the Clone Wars because it's just the more like recent of like what's happening at the same time. But when you look at like that last season and the third movie, like Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Like I said, you almost want to watch the movie and that season at the same time because you just want to see what's happening at the same time and get the big picture.
Jackson was saying that there is like a supercut of
there's this
like the last half of
cut.
Clone Wars. Yeah, the last half of Clone Wars cut in with the actual movie Revenge of the Sith.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like the only times I've seen it available, it's like you essentially pay for a live stream invite and you watch it on the we just lost him.
Okay, hold on. We left you on the live stream invite, so we'll just remember that's where you left off.
Okay.
We'll see if he can rejoin. I wonder if his internet went out or something. Let me text him really. Oh, there he is.
Hello.
Are you still recording, Brandon?
Hello? Yeah, we're all good. What just happened?
I don't know. You just left the call.
I don't know what just happened. Yeah, just my Discord just crashed and came back.
It was fun.
Okay, we'll go back to Jackson. Jackson was talking about how you have to have a live stream invite and action.
You essentially pay to get a live stream invite, and then you watch it on the live stream, and it's the last 4 episodes, so the entire Siege of Mandalore spliced in concurrently with Revenge of the Sith, so it matches timeline wise.
Oh,
and
man.
It's like 4 hours long.
How much? That's all I have to ask.
Yeah, right. I know. I saw
know.
one. There was like the last one I saw. I think it happened around like, I would say like September, August, maybe. It was like the end of last summer that it was like starting to like show up and come out. And I haven't seen one since,
it's
but
on
I know it exists.
Like every torrent website ever.
I know. I'm kind of. I bet you could find it if you really looked for it.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sure. So that is something I'm gonna have to do.
Brandon, we'll kind of start with you with this question. How does this film rank in your ranking of Star Wars films? Like, we know that Revenge of the Sith is your favorite. Mm-hmm. What follows Revenge of the Sith in your definitive, if you want to call it that, your definitive ranking of the films?
A New Hope.
Really?
Yes, actually. Just the follow-up of what's happening after and just the aftermath. I love it. And I know it was an older movie and a lot of people kind of look back, but man, when you look at it, like, none of that was really, I guess, green screen. It was all like paintings.
Matte paintings, yeah.
Yes. And I mean, that's amazing to me of how great it looks and how technologically advanced everything looks.
And physical sets and creature designs and production design and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean,
Empire Strikes Back on Hoth, like those AT-ATs, those were like actual models and they actually set them on fire.
Yeah.
Like, that's nuts to me.
The original trilogy itself is just like a modern marvel. Like, there's just there's no other way of going about it. Jackson, how does Revenge of the Sith rank in your Star Wars ranking, if there is one?
When it comes to favorites, it's funny. So this is number 2 when it comes to favorites, but when it comes to just like Star Wars films that like I guess are my tops, it's like 4, but it's also like 3.
Yeah.
Because like Empire always holds like a special place, but that's just because like it's the perfect movie. But then like, you know, Revenge of the Sith pops up, and then I'm like, but A New Hope, like that's the classic, and I'm like, all right, hold on, let me rearrange real quick. Like, let me. It depends on it depends on the mood.
It is so hard to rank these films.
Oh, it is. It's very hard.
Because there's so much to love about every Star Wars film, no matter how good or bad. There's just so much to love. Because I mean, for me, this is a ranking I did last week on my Letterboxd account. If you want to follow me, I'm at braydonleadbetter, but that's beside the point. On Letterboxd, this is my definitive Star Wars ranking at the moment. So if you want to know my definitive Star Wars ranking, this is it. Number 1 is The Empire Strikes Back, currently. It always switches between this and The Last Jedi, which is my number 2 currently. My number 3 goes to A New Hope. My number 4, this is a hot take, is The Rise of Skywalker. My number 5 is The Force Awakens. My number 6 is The Return of the Jedi. And here we are at number 7, Revenge of the Sith. Number 8 is Solo. Number 9 is Rogue One. Number 10 is The Phantom Menace. And coming in at last, but still, I love this movie, Attack of the Clones. So that's, for all of you keeping score at home, that is my definitive Star Wars ranking. I know none of you care or needed to know about that, but that is my definitive Star Wars ranking.
You know, a little off topic, but I'm kind of curious, if you don't mind, why is Empire so high for both of you guys?
I think Empire is just the perfect movie to, one, follow up something as iconic as A New Hope. And something to bring us such an engaging story and it just boggles your mind how it's able to do so many things and hit so many points.
Flows so well into the next while still giving new and original. And
Yes.
Okay. I can get behind that.
And it pulls it off every single time.
Yeah. And the way that, you know, Irvin Kershner is able to convey tone visually and is able to, send these messages and themes out through the character's dialogue, and able to just make these little things and little scenes that seem so insignificant when you're looking at them to the surface level. But then when you dive deep, there's so much to be learned and so much power behind a lot of the statements that are brought to the table in The Empire Strikes Back. I just think it's probably in my top 3 or 4 movies of all time. So I think that's why it deserves the number 1 spot in my definitive ranking.
Like I said, I can definitely get behind that.
Yeah.
I know we're kind of off topic on like Revenge of the Sith, but
no, that's cool. We'll get there. It's a long podcast.
Man, and the one thing I always think about, though, when I think of Empire, and I can definitely understand what you both are saying, because I always think back to the same scene of, "No, Luke, I am your father." And then he's trying to get him to turn
the
and join him.
ultimate cinema twist.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was like such a big thing.
For sure.
And it's like you guys said, it's so, even though it follows up an iconic movie, it makes itself iconic.
Exactly.
Just the whole time.
And I think that's what it is about it that I love so much. For sure. But kind of getting back on track, what was your first experience with Revenge of the Sith? Did you go see this movie in theater?
I did not.
I didn't either.
I mean, we were fairly young.
We were, I believe 2005, we would have been in 1st or 2nd grade, one of the two.
I was 6 years old. My parents took me 3 different times. What are you guys talking about?
Yeah, I had parents that didn't like Star Wars that much, so I was kind of screwed there.
My parents like Star Wars, but I didn't think they trusted me at like a movie theater, I guess, yet. Because, I was kind of an asshole kid. But my first experience, I remember being in my room, and we ended up going to Blockbuster. And I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen this movie yet. So I was like, can we get Revenge of the Sith? And they're like, yeah, of course. So we rented it from Blockbuster. And I had a small portable DVD player. I mean,
hold on, I'm gonna interrupt you really quick. Was it the Blockbuster on Vogel Road across from Target? Yes,
it was.
Whoa.
The OG Blockbuster in our area. All right, continue.
OG
Sorry,
in our area for sure.
Yeah.
So wanted it. Parents were like, yeah, that's cool. Let's rent it and let them watch. So I was watching on this super small portable DVD player, and if you look at the Discord like camera boxes, it was a smaller screen than that.
Awesome. Man.
I mean, it was tiny. Like, it had enough room to fit a disc and a screen on top of that. I mean, I'm talking like that big for reference.
That's awesome.
So my first experience was watching this was on that tiny little screen.
For the audio listeners, how big was that you just put up with your hands?
Oh, it was probably like
2 inches by 4 inches, maybe.
I'd say like. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, like 2 inches by 4 inches.
There you go.
It was about the size of an actual disc, like a DVD disc. It was probably about the size of that, but like just, make it into a square. I remember watching through the whole movie and not understanding a damn thing that was going on.
Yeah.
I was like, man,
it's a little convoluted.
Well, and as a
kid, when you're a kid.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like you watch through and you're just like, man, this is just cool. Blasters, lightsabers, people are dying. Awesome.
Yeah.
Other than that,
And oh, look, Darth Vader.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. Jackson, What about you? What was your first experience with Revenge of the Sith specifically?
I remember being late to the movie theater the first time. I remember sitting in the theater and the General Grievous scene, he starts spinning the lightsabers and just being like, whoa, I don't know who that guy is, but he's really cool. I remember when it came out on DVD and my mom bought it for me, and the way she like surprised me with it was like, I have an itch on my back. Can you scratch it? And I was like, yeah, whatever, being a kid. And I down, and all of a sudden I hit like a movie case and I was like, oh, like pulled it out. I was like, Revenge of the Sith.
Jackson, is everything okay at home?
Yeah, I just, my mom, she just hit it on her person, was just like, hey.
All right, just making sure.
Got Revenge of the Sith on me.
I think my first experience with this movie, I can't really say that I remember. I remember it coming out and me really wanting to see it because I had seen a lot of the ads on TV, and I had also seen a lot of the cereal advertisements, which was also my first introduction to the original trilogy, was seeing the back of a cereal box, and it was like these different cutout trading cards you could cut out of the cereal box, and there was like a Chewbacca one, a Luke Skywalker one, I think there was like a Tarkin one, and I remember being like, who the heck are these guys? There's like a Han Solo one too, and I remember that kind of being like the Revenge of the Sith marketing push was kind of like the nostalgia of the original trilogy. And then I remember
remember these guys? Well, they're not in it.
Yeah. I remember a couple people, whenever I was in elementary school, a couple people in my class who ended up getting pulled out of school to go see Revenge of the Sith.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah, and I was always so jealous about those kids whose mom came to pick them up from school to go see Revenge of the Sith.
Dude,
that's incredible.
Yeah. Speaking of cereal boxes, light up lightsaber spoons.
Oh, I was just thinking that too.
I had those. Did you have those, Brandon?
Fuck yes, I did.
Yeah.
These things were awesome.
Did you have any of those, Jackson?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely.
Absolutely.
The red ones. I think we still have like a red one.
Really? You still own some of them?
Maybe.
I guarantee that costs a lot of money on eBay.
Hard maybe.
Who needs to go to Batu at Galaxy's Edge when you have a red lightsaber spoon?
Yeah. I think we've kind of we've kind of taken enough time beating around the bush. Let's get into the hard details of Revenge of the Sith here. Let's start with the opening, and we have the crawl, which kind of starts out a little weird, a little different from a lot of the Star Wars movies. And the first sentence even is just war! Exclamation mark. Mm-hmm. What is your kind of general reaction on the crawl itself, Brandon?
What is it good for?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it gives you a lot of context.
Yeah.
I mean, to actually what's going on, because before all that, you really don't, I guess, know what's going on. The only thing you have before that is, you had the Clone Wars, or Attack of the Clones. And then after this, I think, is when the Clone Wars was made, correct?
Yeah, Clone Wars was 2008. This was 2005.
So, I mean, the whole thing is basically they're talking about how the Republic is crumbling and they're being under attack. And it's just saying how they're being attacked on Coruscant.
And the Chancellor is captured.
Count Dooku is there. Yeah, exactly. And they're basically saying there's heroes on both sides.
Right. And that's kind of that's really important to point out, is that there are heroes on both sides and not just heroes in the Republic.
And then it even, and the other thing is it says evil is everywhere, if you remember that line.
Yeah.
So it's giving you a lot of context to the fact that, it's not everything is what it seems.
Yeah. Jackson, what about you?
I think this movie kind of it jumps you in with the current to at least catch you up with what's going on in the current battle, and the rest of the movie does the telling that this has been going on.
Yeah,
because we obviously haven't seen the war all that much. We just see the final days of it. Really,
it's so crazy how they jump from the birth of the Clone Wars to the ending of the Clone Wars.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the opening crawl gives just enough that the just the first sequence with just rescuing Palpatine really just kind of solidifies this is where we are wartime wise. This is how it's going.
It does a great job at establishing the stakes of where we're going into the moment. Yeah. And then we get the great battle over Coruscant sequence with the two Obi-Wan and Anakin Jedi starfighters kind of going through all the big Republic ships and the Separatist ships, and shooting down those vulture droids. And we also get a sense of like the relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan a lot more here, and like their chemistry.
This is probably my favorite opening sequence in a Star Wars movie too.
Yeah, it's it's 15 years old, but the CG still holds up for this sequence.
Yes, for sure. Well, and a big thing with that is, going back and watching it, you notice how you can see Anakin's attachments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because there's literally the part where all the droids are attacking Obi-Wan's ship, and he's like, just keep going, like, our mission is to save the Chancellor, and he's, you see the look on his face, the gleam in his eye, and he's like, no, I know what I'm doing. I can save both of us and still rescue the Chancellor.
Well, even too, like when they're going in an oddballs team, the clone pilot team that's defending Anakin and Obi-Wan, and they start getting torn up, and Anakin's like, I'm gonna go help them out, and Obi-Wan's no, we have to stick to the mission. It's same thing. Is Anakin's attachment make him naturally caring to just everybody, and that includes just the clones and his army.
Well,
yeah, and go ahead,
go
Brandon.
ahead. Sorry, no, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say it says a lot about Anakin's fear of loss and how Anakin, he at this point in his life, he has lost enough. He has lost Qui-Gon. He has lost his mother. He's at a point in his life where he is not taking no for an answer. He has to save these people he cares about. Mm-hmm. And we see his attachment to Obi-Wan, and it's further built upon in the Clone Wars too. And I think it says a lot about Anakin's character and why he makes the decision. Star Wars is always about the choices you make. And it says a lot about Anakin and the decisions he ends up making, especially later on in this movie, and what actually, ends up with the fate of the galaxy too. So it's a point. That's an important point to make too.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree with that, and it's like I said, it really sets up his character of where he's at now.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's a really big thing because when you look back at Attack of the Clones, you just see him forming that attachment to Padme, but you don't see his care for everyone else.
Exactly. Yeah. And I would argue that you also see that attachment, especially in Attack of the Clones, you see that attachment with Obi-Wan in a very weird way, because in Attack of the Clones, he spends a lot of his time complaining about Obi-Wan and complaining about how Obi-Wan is holding him back and he's too strict and he's too cruel. But I think that kind of forms Obi-Wan as like this big brother / father figure to Anakin at this point in his life. And, when you're a teenager, you don't really understand where your parents are coming from, and you don't really understand that the decisions they're making for you are only for the best. And, Anakin's not understanding that. So, I think that he views Obi-Wan at this point. He's grown past the parental side of his relationship with Obi-Wan, and he's more towards the
like a brotherly
partnership, Yeah, for sure. And we see that a lot through this opening sequence and their chemistry and the performances with Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor, which we'll get to the performances a little bit later in the episode. But I think the opening of this film is just so powerful, and it's just such a great adventure and action set piece to bring us in on for this movie, especially with the kind of sour taste in a lot of people's mouths coming into this movie, especially coming from Attack of the Clones and the other prequels that people were iffy on, for sure. But we kind of come from this moment into the rescue of Palpatine and Grievous and his guards. What do you think about the whole sequence? It's like takes up a big chunk of this movie. Like a solid half hour of this movie is spent on Grievous's ship. And apparently, including deleted scenes, this sequence was supposed to be over an hour long. So this is a pretty important sequence for the story itself. But what do you think of all the Grievous scenes here in the beginning?
Well, so a big thing with me is with this movie especially, Grievous was just thrown into this. If you didn't know like a novel or comic by that time, you had no idea who Grievous was. I mean, like Jackson was saying, when he was like, okay, this guy is like a robot and he has lightsabers, like he's cool. but that's really all you know about him. You don't really know where he stands or like what his beliefs are, like who he is. But oh shoot, I guess the whole sequence itself with Grievous, it sets it up to where you start to realize that, like, okay, he's on the separatist side, he's, you know, not for the Democracy Republic era, and I guess in the long run, you know, kind of jumping forward, but you realize, like, he was used to, just like Dooku.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, for sure. That's a great observation. Jackson, what about you? What do you gather from the whole, you know, going from this opening sequence and this big action set piece into the rescue of Palpatine and trying to confront Grievous?
I think the rescue is mainly its biggest focus is showing off Anakin.
Yeah.
Which that's kind of the given, especially in the Dooku fight. But I think with it coming down to Grievous, I love how the interaction with Grievous isn't all too much. They barely really fight him. He escapes pretty much instantly and gets right out of it. And I think what's cool about that is that it made it seem like all of this was kind of quote unquote for nothing. To Obi-Wan, that's his normal. I mean, he's got the quote when he goes after Grievous to Utapau. He's like, this might just be another, you know, wild bantha chase or something like that.
Yeah,
you know,
that's the quote. Yeah.
So I think I'm more kind of focused on like the rescue and just like seeing Anakin and Obi-Wan's like banter to each other about like R2 in the elevator to even the first line when they get to Palpatine and Obi-Wan bows and he goes Chancellor and Anakin immediately, are you all right? Like he just asks him. He doesn't even. It's just that instant familiar and like
that
casualty
says a lot about
that
Anakin's
he has.
character too.
Just very upfront and like
Well, and not just that. You see him, like you said before, you see him that he has a relationship with the Chancellor, and you can see that it's like even though him and Obi-Wan are past that like parental stage, I guess, from Obi-Wan.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Palpatine is still like the, hey, like I could be your father figure, you know, blah, blah, blah.
Which, yeah, I've always argued that in this movie, I think Obi-Wan kind of morphs into the brother figure for Anakin, and Palpatine morphs into this father figure of like this, since the Council is kind of not giving Anakin what he wants, he turns to Palpatine for this kind of mentorship and this, you know, sense of, you know, like you said, this parental guidance, if you will. But kind of back to this scene with especially with the duel between Obi-Wan and Anakin and Dooku. I love the cockiness that Anakin displays in this duel, especially with the you know, my powers have doubled since we last met, Count, and stuff like that. And he's like, twice the pride, double the foe, and all the great quotes that come out of this sequence, especially with the, you know, when Anakin finally bests Dooku and he has the lightsabers to his throat, and he has that moment of conflict of, I shouldn't do this, but maybe I should because he's like, a Sith Lord.
I want it so bad.
Yeah,
well, I mean,
in his mind, he's always thinking like, I shouldn't. This isn't the Jedi way, and it's a recurring theme with Anakin in this movie is, I need to follow the Jedi way. That wasn't the Jedi way. I shouldn't have done this. This isn't the Jedi way, and I think that's super important to realize that even at the beginning of this movie, Anakin is still super hyper focused on this aspect of what it means to be a Jedi and, you know, what a Jedi would do in certain situations. And especially with this situation, you know, he thinks he knows what it means to be a Jedi, and he thinks he knows what the correct course of action would be having a Sith Lord unarmed. You know, as he says, it was an unarmed prisoner. I shouldn't have done that. And having what he thought was his mentor saying, no, do it, kill him. You know, you have to, you know, it's the right thing to do. And that sense of conflict, like, you know, like how absolutely confusing would that be for you if you were in that situation and someone that you truly respected and someone that you were truly, you confided in was telling you to do something that you didn't think was right?
Well, and I think that just goes to show how, when he started to become a Jedi, when his training started to end, I guess, is more so what I'm trying to say, was the start of a war. So, if Jedi are supposed to be peacekeepers, how can you justify, like, your Jedi way when you're in a wartime? Like, that can be compromised. I guess your mentality can be compromised. I mean, Anakin, if above all else, was a phenomenal warrior.
Yeah.
Before he was Jedi or Sith. And I mean, he's always been a fighter. I mean, even going back to like Phantom Menace, like he survived, he built pod racers, he was like kept trying to fight and get out of slavery. So
yeah,
it's kind of a tough thing to kind of look back and reflect on. But I get what you're saying is that when you have that figure in your life, and I mean, you also got to remember, like, Obi-Wan was knocked out. I think if Obi-Wan was up and like going, I think this would have been a totally different scene.
Yeah, and it does a great job at establishing that relationship between Anakin and Palpatine, where Anakin has this sense of trust in Palpatine, and the way he decides to, determine his actions based upon what Palpatine is telling him, especially in that moment itself, says a lot about where Anakin is emotionally and mentally. Jackson, what about you? What do you think about this whole, Anakin's inner conflict in this moment?
I agree with what Brandon said about just, it's the Jedi way. It's not the Jedi way. This isn't the Jedi way. Is everything's pretty much been said. Anakin, his whole life is held. He's at the point in his life that he's holding himself on the pedestal, whereas everyone else has pretty much solidified the, I guess, greatness that they had kind of projected onto Anakin. Anakin turned out to be a really, caring and good, he was a good Jedi.
Yeah.
And Anakin held that doubt the entire time. It just was insecure about himself. And then I think when, especially given in the moment of he has the upper hand and he has the ability of power, just the wrong person ended up being there was Palpatine, and, kind of showed him to be, curious and, I guess, seduced by that power, to be intrigued by that power of having somebody against you and, taking that life away of getting something that you want, even though you know that it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel correct, but it's something that you want no matter what.
Well, and a big thing, honestly, is it like kind of elaborating on that, the whole thing was orchestrated by Palpatine.
Oh, yeah, I was thinking that too. Right? The whole fight, I'm like, this is all planned.
Well, especially if you read the Revenge of the Sith novel, it really goes deep into how tightly of a grip Palpatine really had on the strings for the Clone Wars in general, but definitely for this moment. Palpatine knew exactly what he was doing.
Well, and it's like, even if they were to have failed with that, like, rescue, nothing would have happened. It just would have ended with either them taking over anyway, or whatever happening. Like, he would have been a win-win. Let go or whatever. Exactly. No matter what happened, he had one hand on the steering wheel the whole time.
For sure. Yeah.
And I don't know if that just goes to show how much influence he had over both sides the whole entire time, or if it just goes to show how how he orchestrated to kind of mold Anakin, because he knew it was either going to be Dooku wins and he has a stronger apprentice, or Anakin wins and he has a stronger apprentice.
Yeah, like you said, it's a win-win situation for Palpatine here, because, I mean, the Jedi at this point are kind of getting weary of Palpatine because, he's overstayed his welcome in the Senate. He, is issuing orders that a chancellor typically wouldn't, issue. It's just one of those things where there's a series of abnormalities going on within the Senate and within the Jedi Council where it's just enough to where they're a little bit uneasy, especially with Palpatine. And going into, after, again, we'll get into the great quotes with another happy landing and all that kind of stuff with the ending of this sequence. Once they get back on Coruscant, we see that Palpatine is in his more engaging stage of grooming Anakin and forming this close bond with Anakin. And then we end up getting into that great Darth Plagueis story and all of that. But why do you think that it was so vital to Palpatine to gain this relationship with Anakin, especially in this time of need for the Jedi?
So, okay, even going back and, like, regardless of saying, like, oh, he's the chosen one or whatever, even if you throw that out, like I said before, Anakin has always been, first and foremost, a great warrior.
Yeah.
He's always been a fighter, and whatever side I feel that everyone kind of thought and had the mentality that whatever side Anakin is on is a winning side, because Anakin will not lose. He does not have that mentality of I will lose. Like, even if he loses, he'll be back to win.
Yeah.
So I think Palpatine kind of saw this, and his grooming and kind of seducing Anakin over to the dark side was his version of, no matter what happens at this point, I will get the victory because I have Anakin or, Vader in this instance. So it's like when you're playing chess, and the opponent doesn't have the queen anymore, but you still do. Like, you have the power.
I wish I played chess to understand that reference.
I got it.
So sorry.
That made sense. Yeah, I got it.
Okay, at least I got one person, yeah.
The queen is
sure.
Vader.
Exactly.
Yeah. Jackson, what about you? How do you interpret this grooming of Anakin by Palpatine in this movie?
Similar idea, but in order to control the strongest force being, at least at the moment, you need to get its unyielding trust. And Palpatine essentially does that by kind of just that grooming and that father figure and basically giving Anakin someone to trust in his entire, because he's stressed about everything that he needs. It's like Anakin uses Palpatine like he should use a therapist. That's true. And he gave it put himself in that attachment of caring and thinking that this person actually cares for him and that, this person is listening and understanding, which obviously isn't the case. And it's building Anakin's hopes up. That's all he needed to do. It was like, if I'm going to control it, I need to trick this person to give me its trust. So even when they figure it out that I've tricked them, they're in it too deep that they can't do anything about it. And that's essentially what happens to Vader later on, is that he kind of figures it out and is just like, well, shit.
Well,
yeah.
And I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off there. But big thing with that and grooming in, getting into their too deep in. It's kind of like, you could be too deep into something, but you could realize no, if I turn it around right now, I could save this and I can salvage a lot of it. But he was so caught up in the fact that, he could save people.
Yeah.
And it was like Palpatine used his good nature against him, which is weird to think about, that Jedi are supposed to be good, but this now Sith Lord still has good nature and wants to save people.
Yeah.
So it's just,
Yeah, for sure. And I think that Palpatine was able to catch Anakin at such a vulnerable moment in his life, because he's having these dreams about, obviously Padme dying in childbirth, and he has this kid on the way, and he doesn't know what he's going to do because the Jedi don't even know he's married, don't even know he's in this relationship with Padme, and he's supposed to take care of this kid while also being a Jedi, and there's so much weight on his shoulders that it's the most vulnerable moment for Palpatine to come in and, you know, swoop in for his prey. But also, just the icing on the cake here is the Jedi asking Anakin to, at the same time, spy on Palpatine in all of his dealings and everything that Palpatine's doing, and kind of get in close to Palpatine for the purpose of reporting to the Jedi. What kind of emotional baggage do you think Anakin has in this moment? And what, like, there's just so much here that Anakin, like, at this point, I would have said, screw it, I'm turning to the dark side too. Like, there's just so much crap that man is going through right now.
Well, okay, personally, so I'm kind of on the opposite that side there. I feel it as, like, I know he's gone through all of these trials with the council, and they turn around and ask something so big. And even after, I mean, it was right after they were like, hey, you're on the council, but you're not a master. Which, you know, and that's a big, like, meme
For
thing
sure.
in there, you know, and I understand that, you know, it's kind of a jokey part of it. But, man, it's like they still want him to prove that they're still on, like, he's still on their side. But at the same time, like you said, the emotional baggage of, you're asking me to do something to someone close to me. That's
right,
almost as
someone
if,
I can find in.
Well, exactly. That's almost as if they turned around and said, hey, we suspect Obi-Wan of being a Sith Lord. Like, go spy
Right.
on Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, same dynamic.
Exactly. So turning around and doing that. But the thing is when they get into it and he does kind of spy on him, and he eventually confronts Mace about, like, how he thinks he is the Sith Lord.
Yeah, he figures it out pretty quickly.
Like, well, and that in itself, though, I feel like should have been enough for Mace to turn around and say, you know what, I trust you.
Well, I mean, he even says, he's like, if you're right, like, you have my trust.
Well, but
Right.
see, that's the problem, is he says, if you're right. At that point, like, claiming that the Chancellor is a Sith Lord, even though you've had suspicions, I think at this point he should have said, hey, Anakin, come with us.
Yeah, and at that point, what Anakin is saying is a very wild accusation in the Jedi Council's eyes, because in the Council's eyes, Palpatine's the last person you'd expect. Like, we get it that Palpatine, his overstayed his welcome in the Senate, and he's done all these things.
A Sith Lord.
A Sith Lord? No way. And that's kind of the struggle that the Jedi have here at the end of this movie. But kind of keeping on track here, we get this great scene, and I think this is my favorite scene in the entire movie. Again, besides the great battles that we see in Mustafar and in the Senate with Palpatine and Yoda, but my favorite scene in this movie is Palpatine telling the story of Darth Plagueis the Wise, and just the performance of Ian McDiarmid and the way he goes about telling this story is so chilling, and it is so it keeps you on the edge of your seat, and Anakin's reaction to it even more so. Brandon, what's kind of your opinion on this moment in this scene of the story of Darth Plagueis?
Well, so the whole point was, like, the story had a purpose. I mean, whether you want to believe it or not, it all had a purpose. When Anakin was constantly confiding in Palpatine about how he's having dreams that he's going to lose people, and I'm sure he talked to Palpatine about how he had the dreams that he was going to lose his mother, like, way back when.
Yeah.
So if he's dreaming about losing his mom, which happened, and now he's dreaming about losing Padme, which, eventually will happen, he's abusing that and basically telling them, like, hey, the dark side has a way to save them. He's lying, obviously. Well, I wouldn't necessarily say he's lying, but he knows that he's not going to teach him in time.
Truth.
Exactly. He's giving him a flashlight in a dark tunnel and telling him, hey, there's the end of the tunnel, like, you can see the light. But obviously that's not it.
Right.
So I think the biggest purpose behind it and how in-depth he went was, this was his, like, wow, no matter what happens, if I slip up and I do something dumb, he's still going to be on my side because he knows I have the power. Like, he trusts me enough to know that I have the power to save those people, and I can teach him that.
Yeah, and especially that great reveal we get whenever, Anakin finally finds out that Palpatine is the Sith Lord, and he's the Sith Lord that Palpatine was talking about in that story. It was great too. But Jackson, what do you gather from this scene in this film?
I love the dialogue for the scene.
Yes,
and the performances especially. Too. I think, we'll talk about quotes, but I think one of the best lines in this movie is the dark side of the Force leads to as a pathway to many some consider to be unnatural.
And I remember that specifically from the trailer.
Whoa.
And being like, whoa, that's a cool line.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool scene to just kind of, with like the space opera too, and just like the big bubbles. I just love how this scene is just built together and just put together to just kind of, it's the last place you would expect it to kind of be told this, this old Force myth legend, but it's chilling, and it's just Anakin's curiosity, just like it gets you worried, and I love it.
It's so unsettling in the best way possible.
So actually a big thing with that, kind of elaborate on it being a weird spot to have that conversation. I would argue that it's actually the best place to have that conversation, because who would expect that? It gives me like a Bond, like a James Bond information like gathering sequence.
Yeah, but it's done in such a genius way where it doesn't feel forced.
Exactly. It's just this whole
no
natural...
pun intended.
Yeah, well, nothing is forced.
Yeah,
but no, it's just like, oh well, I know, like Palpatine knows that Anakin was sent to spy. He has to know something. So he's like, well, let me just take him somewhere secluded. Boom. Like, no one's ever going to bother us here. Right. So he just abuses the hell out of it like anybody else.
What do you think I'm going to do?
No, exactly. It's like...
I've got box seats to this opera, bro.
Mace Windu can't get your spy dogs up in here.
Yeah.
Like, who goes to a hockey game and has a private conversation in front row seats? Like, no, man, they're in like a penthouse suite.
You think they made Anakin pay to get in?
Yeah, absolutely. He like hands him his lightsaber. He's like, here, hold this for a little bit. I'll be back.
Here, hold this. Yeah.
Bouncer stopped him and he's like, hey man, do you know who I am? And he's like, oh yeah, you're Anakin. Come on through.
For sure. And then especially we see a lot of new planets in this in this movie. We got Utapau, Kashyyyk. I think the first planet that comes up is Yoda has to go on this mission on Kashyyyk. What did you kind of react to seeing the Wookiee planet for the first time, Brandon?
Like reacting, I thought it was a really cool thing because it was kind of a new planet and the whole thing was new. Yeah. I mean, when you think even back to the prequels, like the main planets you had, there was Hoth, Snow Planet, Tatooine, Desert Planet, but I'm forgetting the name, but like Jungle Planet.
Endor?
Not Endor, that was more like forest. I'm thinking more of
Dagobah? Talking about like Yoda's planet?
That was more like a swamp. I'm thinking where the rebel base was.
Oh, Yavin.
Yavin 4.
Yes, Yavin. So, you don't really see like a rainforest kind of beach setting.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is the first time you see something like this, and I think it was
such a cool thing. And you also get like
thing.
These treehouse bases.
Yeah, it was
exactly.
Tree City.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all that fun stuff.
So it's just a neat thing to see like the new concept of what the ideas that they could throw in and be like, hey, this is completely new.
Yeah, and we get these weird camo stormtrooper, clone trooper uniforms, which I always thought were really cool whenever I was a kid. And then kind of the second act really takes its time in this movie. We get to see kind of Obi-Wan and Anakin struggle, as well as Anakin and Padme struggle, about what we're going to do with this baby and all that kind of stuff. And Anakin's kind of being short with Padme. And then we get this last kind of civil encounter with Anakin and Obi-Wan, where they're kind of saying their last goodbyes. Anakin's going off to Utapau, or not Anakin, Obi-Wan's going off to Utapau, and Anakin is kind of continuing his research into Palpatine. What do you think about, the emotional depth that scene, that the underlying emotional depth that scene has, and how it impacts the rest of the saga?
So, I mean, like you said, it truly was like the last civil encounter, the last goodbye between the two of them. And because when they meet up again for like that last time, he's no longer Anakin. Right. He is Vader. Like, he hasn't been given the name yet, but he's on the dark side. He's no longer Anakin, regardless of a name or not. I honestly think the emotional depth there, and the biggest part anyway to me, is that it's like you have this person who's grounding you to the Jedi, and that one person who was your outlet for things had to go away, and the only person you have now is Palpatine. So it kind of really made the story go more in depth with the fact that, you have this, like, they're kind of joking around and they're saying their goodbyes, and Obi-Wan's like, remember my teachings. It's
almost sad. Like, it's pretty emotional.
And if you heard the music, like, the music wasn't like an upbeat, like, hey, we're going to see each other again and it's going to be great. It was kind of like a low, mellow tone.
Yeah. Jackson?
I tear up when Anakin kind of takes that sigh and he goes, "I've disappointed you, Master." Like
it's almost like he knows.
It's those two lines, and Obi-Wan just looks at him as, "You are strong and wise, my young apprentice." And I'm like, oh my God,
you are by far a greater Jedi than I will ever be.
It just breaks my heart. Yeah. Just like, this is the last moment these two look into each other's eyes, and this is the last moment Obi-Wan sees that light in Anakin, and that's just so heartbreaking to me. That
and how
even the second Obi-Wan turns away, Anakin's smile drops. And he's instantly back in his clouded just turmoil that he's put himself in.
And how we realize that Obi-Wan is such a rock in Anakin's life, and how much dependence Anakin has on Obi-Wan throughout his entire adolescence. And, he's always been the one that's kept Anakin on track. And we realize that, oh crap, Anakin does not have this Jedi guidance anymore. He has this, he has this weird alliance to both the Jedi and Palpatine, and they're both giving him conflicting messages. Yeah. So I think that last moment with Anakin and Obi-Wan is very bittersweet, and it's very almost like Anakin knows this is the last goodbye, and like the movie is almost self-aware that this is the last goodbye. Yeah. But Obi-Wan's all like, you know what? Yeah, like, see you, man.
It's like,
it's
probably gonna be nothing. Like, I'll be back by tonight. Like,
yeah, and it's just moments like those that are so deep and so moving, and letting these characters have these moments that on the surface level don't seem like much, but when you look into them are so emotional, that I really love about Star Wars, and George Lucas's directing especially. It's just one of the most overlooked directors of all time. But anyway, from that scene, we're kind of a little more with Obi-Wan on Utapau and his pursuit of General Grievous, especially with the, whenever he first lands, and that one guy, I forgot what his name is, but it's played by Bruce Spence, the guy who's like, "Oh, there's no war here unless you've brought it with you." And
He's here. Yeah. They're holding us hostage.
Yeah, I love that guy. I only know the actor's name. I don't know why the actor's name is stuck in my head for so long, but Bruce Spence, that's who that is.
I had an action figure of him, and he had like a long. Yeah, oh yeah, dude. I bet you I still have him too.
Very nice. Brandon, what do you kind of gather from the whole Utapau sequence and we eventually get the Obi-Wan versus General Grievous and how Obi-Wan takes out Grievous?
So, are you talking about just that whole entire
just the whole sequence that we get the chase with Anakin and not Anakin, the whole chase with Obi-Wan and his lizard, his lizard horse pet thing, and, eventually down to the execution of Order 66. But just from initially the Obi-Wan's arrival leading into the encounter with Grievous.
I kind of gather it as he didn't know what he was getting into, and like we kind of said before, wild Banthar chase he thought it might have been.
Yeah.
So he gets there under the impression it's just another assignment, but then they kind of, like you said, they tell him hey, he's here.
Right.
The war is here and we need help.
You found him.
Yeah, exactly. It's if you had a big sign that said here's Waldo.
Yeah, right.
That's exactly. So I guess getting more into that, he finally knows, and instead of calling for any backup or anything, he's like, you know what, now's the time, I can take him. We're good to go. So he jumps in, and the most, biggest iconic meme thing, he finds him, he jumps down, hello there.
Yeah, I've even made a meme video from that sequence. I cut together a funny, I only uploaded it to Facebook, but I cut together this funny scene where it's Revenge of the Sith. Obi-Wan jumps down, he lands, he says hello there, and then it cuts to Maul from Rebels in the desert on Tatooine saying,
That's hilarious.
Yeah. Jackson, what about you with that whole Utapau sequence in the pursuit of Grievous?
Well, we were kind of just talking about it. I like how it kind of sets up it's going to be another Obi-Wan investigation, like an Attack of the Clones, and then the dude's just he's here, you found him. So then Obi-Wan's well, I guess screw it. I guess I'm just gonna have some fun. So
he's
rents a giant lizard, throws his robe off, just jumps right into the middle.
Spend his life savings on a lizard rental.
He's like, hey guys. He's like, what are we doing? What's going on? Yeah, I think I love the shots of when that fight first starts between Grievous and Obi-Wan, and he's spinning the lightsabers.
Yeah.
And it's the pan across of just the lightsabers spinning really fast and the glow of it. I love that.
And that's one of the first times you see the lightsabers with Grievous in full effect. When he has all four out.
Dude, I remember being in theaters when he breaks apart and he opens the forearms for the first time, just freaking out. That's awesome.
Well, and you don't, like I said before, you don't see him anywhere else. This is the first time he's ever been introduced. So when you see him more in Clone Wars, you're like, okay, this is pretty cool. I know he can do this. But that scene in itself, it's you fully see what Grievous can do. And he's even exclaiming, I've been trained by Dooku.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Grievous is such a three-dimensional character because he's this troubled lizard with droid armor. Yeah. And he ended up being this Sith apprentice, but at the same time
doomed to lead this idiotic army while also being tested for his life every time.
He's kind of lame and got choked out by Mace Windu and has this weird cough, and he's almost he's past his prime by the time Revenge of the Sith comes, which is kind of fun to see. But kind of after this Utapau sequence, and we get into back on Coruscant, and Anakin has this encounter with Palpatine where Palpatine basically reveals that he is Darth Sidious, and that if Anakin joins the dark side, that he will be able to save Padme, and Palpatine is the only one with the power to save Padme. Brandon, how does this scene work for you? Does this scene work for you when he reveals himself, or do you think that there was another way to go about it?
If you're talking about the scene itself,
Just the reveal of Palpatine to the Jedi, or at least to Anakin himself, being the Sith Lord.
So, like I said before, this entire time, Palpatine has had his hand on the wheel. I mean, he orchestrated his own kidnapping, he did all that, and all of these moments, man, he's the puppeteer. Like, he's pulling the strings. So getting him alone and telling him this, he probably already knew what he was going to do because he was wavering back and forth, and Palpatine knew this. He just needed that little extra push to get him in. So I think this scene kind of makes or breaks the movie, actually. Just him telling him this and letting him know, like, hey, by the way, like, I am the only thing that can save the people you love. Knowing he would more than likely go back to Mace. I mean, again, it's a win-win thing. He either A, turns right then and there and they start everything, or B, he does what he already did and he goes to the Jedi Council, whoever's there, which Palpatine had to have known Mace was the only one there because Obi-Wan was off planet, Yoda was on Kashyyyk, so the biggest person in the council was Mace that was there. So he does that, and knowing Mace's, I guess, more aggressive tactics, he probably knew he was going to grab some of the Jedi and confront him. So knowing all this and knowing what would happen, obviously he knows Anakin has those attachments. He would be compelled, whether he went there or not, he would be compelled to go and like chase after and figure it out. So that's just kind of how I view it anyway, is that it's a big make or break thing because, like I said, Palpatine had his hand on the wheel and this was the final push that he needed.
Yeah. The reason I ask is because I've heard a lot of gripes, especially early on, from the online community, that scene where Palpatine reveals himself is kind of lazy in that he just kind of says, "Oh yeah, didn't you know it was me? I'm the Sith Lord." And people were almost disappointed by that moment, but I disagree with. Because the suspense of that moment is so earned, and it's so built up that I think that moment works a lot for me, especially. But Jackson, what about you with that whole moment with Palpatine's reveal as the Sith Lord to Anakin?
This is my little anecdote, but it also kind of works because I talk about it, but I love the TikTok sound that goes around where it's that audio clip where it's the, "Are you going to beat me? I would very much like to. I know you would.
I know you would. I can feel your anger."
Yeah, but like, it's actually Anakin's response too is like, of course he would. Like, that could just solve literally all of his problems right then and there if he could. And, like, he kind of knows that, but, like, his doubt's like, but what if Palpatine's right? And, like, don't listen to the old dude, but, like, no, because this is, I think, too, this is what Palpatine wanted to implement in Anakin's mind, so when he is separate and it's at least like Mace Windu's going, I'm thinking of the scene when it's Anakin and Padme and they're both staring out the window to the woman singing, and it's Anakin's crying.
That's
and he's
a powerful
just like,
moment.
Yeah, it's just like he's making that decision right then and there. He made the decision to turn right then and there, to at least to disobey Mace Windu and to at least go check it out and to see if Palpatine was okay.
That's how you're interpreting that scene, is that moment when he's looking out the window, that is his decision?
That's his decision to keep Palpatine safe.
Okay.
I think that's his decision to, quote unquote, be loyal to Palpatine. He tries to justify it by making it the Jedi way and at least giving him a trial and whatnot. But like, obviously that changes within that next little couple minutes.
I would say that. Go ahead, Brandon.
Well, I was just going to say I slightly disagree with that in a sense of like, kind of like we said before, it got to a point where he realized he was too far in. Like during that fight scene when Mace comes in with everybody and he realizes like Palpatine just killed everybody except Mace.
Yeah.
And like I said before, it was either option A or option B for Anakin. He was either going to turn right then and there when he revealed that he was a Sith Lord, or B, again, his hand on the steering wheel. He knew Anakin would have been compelled because of Mace's aggressive nature to make sure that Palpatine was okay. And I firmly believe that if he would have stayed a Jedi, or on the light side of things, Palpatine still would have had a trial.
Yeah.
So I don't think that was his turning point. I don't know. I think the biggest turning point is when he kind of sits down, realizes what he's done, and he's like, I can't go back.
Yeah. I mean, it really depends on your viewpoint and how you interpret different scenes in this movie. Because a lot of people, argue that Attack of the Clones was Anakin's turning point and all that kind of stuff. But I think for me, I would argue that that moment when Anakin and Padme are looking out the window with that juxtaposition of Anakin being in this state of hurt, in the state of almost regret, and Padme being in this state of the unknown and, not knowing what the future holds. And I think that kind of says a lot about the both of them, is they're both looking out, not knowing what the future holds because they know this isn't going to a good place. And I almost feel like that moment for Anakin is a moment of regret. Again, with Jackson's point of he kind of knows where this is going, but he's afraid of it. And he can't keep that, he doesn't know how to deal with that emotion of the inevitable. And I think that's really important. Anakin's internal struggle throughout this entire movie is just so deep. And it, especially if you read the novel for this movie, which I very much recommend you read the Revenge of the Sith novel by Matthew Stover.
I follow a Twitter bot that just spouts out quotes from it.
I read it this summer. It is the best Star Wars read I've had in such a long time, man.
I've heard it's actually really good.
It gives you so much juicy details and it puts you inside of Anakin's head throughout this entire process. And, Anakin's a moment looking out that window. And I at this point, I legitimately believe that he is just in such a disassembled state and he is in such regret of, I think it's almost like this is weird to say, but he's almost in like a pre-regret of like, this is what he knows is going to happen. And he's like, I can't believe I'm going to do this. Like that kind of thing. Yeah. So yeah, it's just moments like this where it's just so subtle of just a character looking out a window, and George Lucas can make it so powerful that keeps me backing George Lucas as a director and as a storyteller, and that I've always loved so much about his way of telling stories. But kind of moving on, he does tell Mace, about the news that he knows Palpatine is the Sith Lord, and Mace and his team with Kit Fisto and all these other Master Jedi go and
rip Kit Fisto.
Yeah.
Rip in peace. Yeah, we'll have an entire segment dedicated to Kit Fisto here in a second. But Mace and his team kind of go and pursue Palpatine and ready to arrest him, and they're kind of met with this pushback from Palpatine and this what's supposed to be this big
treason
this big battle between the Jedi Masters and Palpatine Palpatine just rips through those Jedi Master who have been training their entire life to fight a Sith Lord, and they immediately die. Brandon, we'll start with you. What's kind of your take on this?
Well, so actually, let me start off by saying I would argue that they were not trained to fight Sith Lords.
I would argue they are.
Well, so here's the thing, is that's the reason why Count Dooku turned to the dark side, because he was the only one training to fight Sith. Yoda was afraid of that, because everybody thought the Sith were gone. Their whole entire job of what they were training to do was nothing but to be peacekeepers. They were not specifically trained on how to fight and kill Sith, because that's not what they wanted the Jedi Order to be. They didn't want them to be killers. They wanted peacekeepers. So although they were trained fighters, I won't say they were directly trained to fight against Sith. It was kind of a lost way to them. But kind of moving more onto the scene itself, as I said, fucking rip Kit Fisto, dude. He was such a big character, especially in Clone Wars. And
we talk about this a lot dirty on this show.
They did about
so how dirty they did our boy Kit. Yeah.
But just the fact that like you realize Palpatine's kind of when you see Palpatine's character, you're like, he's not young. You know, he's not like an Anakin young, like teenage to 20s. Man, he is probably what, like 50, 60?
Yeah.
He's like in his probably late 60s. Yeah.
So easily like 60s, 70s then. I mean, this man just pulls out a saber, does like a 720 flip.
Thing
spin 720 and just like slices, dude.
Kicking dirt in their eye, and he's throwing shit.
Well, and that's the biggest thing is you realize like the Sith fight dirty. It's not a proper like, hey, we take a bow and we spar. Like, no, it's because
as Yoda says, they take the easy way.
Well, exactly. Yeah. It's always the easy way, but you kind of see like weird. When I always see this fight scene, I always kind of flash back to how Count Dooku fought, and his was more of like an elegant, like he still had that like Jedi fighting style,
dueling,
exactly.
Collected, yeah.
His was more of like this is an art, whereas Palpatine and or Sidious at this point is like, I'm gonna do whatever I can to win and achieve victory.
It's just fast. It's just angry. It's
and we see this, you know. Palpatine, we first get a little taste of his fighting style, and he does this weird stabbing motion with his lightsaber.
Spins at him. And
and all this weird stuff we've never seen anyone who's wielding a lightsaber do before. And then you just have to think of how Windu has to react to a lot of Palpatine's moves, and eventually, you know, Palpatine takes out Kit Fisto and all these other Master Jedi, and the only people left standing are Windu and Palpatine.
Well, and that's why I kind of said, I argue that they weren't really trained to fight Sith because they weren't used to that aggressive manner, whereas like Mace himself had that aggressive fighting style. So going into it, he could kind of stop and be like, oh, wait, I know how to counter myself. So let me kind of wait and like turn this around. Yeah,
and I would say that it's very alluded to very often that Mace is kind of dabbles in the dark side a little bit.
Mm-hmm. I can see that.
Yeah. But we get this great fight scene, and eventually Mace almost bests Palpatine and has him on the ground, ready to basically decapitate him, lightsaber in his face. And that's where Anakin shows up. In this moment, Brandon, does this moment work for you with, you know, Anakin showing up at just the right time where Palpatine's almost about, where Mace is just about to kill Palpatine, he's ready to arrest him, and then Anakin shows up. Does that work for you?
So it absolutely works for me, actually. Kind of a callback, but like I said before, Palpatine has the hand on the steering wheel the whole entire time.
Even up to this moment?
Oh, no, even up to this moment. He had his hand on the steering wheel the entire time. He never let go. I mean, all he had to do, because he knew, like I said, option B was just, he knew Anakin would come back and make sure everything was okay.
Wait it out.
Exactly. Yeah. All he had to do was stall long enough for Anakin to come back, and then he just had to play to Anakin's emotions. That was it. I mean, this whole entire thing orchestrated up till this point, and even after probably orchestrated, but the more I think about it, exactly. That's the entire thing.
This is it.
This is the moment. Like I said before, this was that final push, and right now is the moment that he knows. Like no matter what happened, Anakin was turning, short of like Obi-Wan turning up. But obviously, he's fighting General Grievous at this time, so he knows. Again, it's orchestrated. Obi-Wan's gone, Yoda's gone. The only one that's there who has openly expressed that he does not trust Anakin is Mace. So he knows when Anakin gets there, even though he's fighting between the Jedi way and becoming a Sith, end of the day, he knew Anakin was going to side towards his emotion and not towards the Jedi way, because it wasn't somebody there that he cared about necessarily.
And Anakin is at the point in his life where it's a great adventure that Anakin has throughout this movie. Is he almost is abandoning the Jedi way in this moment, and he's not like, oh, I shouldn't kill, or, Palpatine shouldn't be killed because it's not the Jedi way. He's almost like, no, Palpatine shouldn't be killed because I need him to save my wife. Please don't kill him. I think that moment with Mace and Palpatine and Anakin is great. Jackson, what about you? What do you think about this whole scene and moment in the film?
I think about this moment a lot, actually, because this is everything. This is everything culminated. This is everything
it
planned.
All comes to this.
Is literally this moment, and they threw my boy Mace out of a window. Like they tossed Mace Windu out of a window. But this is literally what this was. The revenge. Like, it's just like, it is fully intact now. It is like, it is just time to go ham on it. And he's just going to unleash the absolute power that he has just been planning and building up for probably most of his life, most of his being Palpatine. I mean, orchestrating and conducting this elaborate scheme to essentially just one up the Jedi, to just prove them wrong and just stick it in their faces. And it's this exact moment that everything in this entire galaxy changes. Is just this office room with just these three people, and you just think it's so simple. It's so simple of a situation that it's like, the second it's over, it's just like, that's it. Like, it's hell.
It takes you a second to realize how high the stakes actually are. For this moment. Yeah.
Well, and you kind of start to realize, because like, Palpatine could have activated Order 66 at any time.
Any moment.
But he waited. I mean, like I said, hand on the steering wheel the entire time.
That's going to be Brandon's new slogan, is hand on the steering wheel.
Well, I mean, that's with this movie, he like I said, puppeteer the whole entire time. He had the strings pulled. He knew what was going to happen, and it was like it was going to go one way or another, and he knew what he needed to do to make whatever happen.
Right. I totally agree, is that everything is so carefully orchestrated by Palpatine. It's almost crazy to think that he had a plan B, C, D, E, F. He had an alternate option for almost every other option there is. And I think that's what makes Palpatine such a great character, especially in the sequel trilogy. But we get this great moment where Palpatine just straight up unleashes on Windu and kills what we think kills Mace Windu. Now, Brandon, what are your thoughts on the, I'm gonna, in quotations, kills the death of Mace Windu? What are your kind of opinions on, do you think there is an opportunity for Mace to come back, Samuel L. Jackson to come back as Mace, or do you think Mace is toast and we'll only ever see him in flashbacks?
So I think that is open for interpretation, to be honest.
What is your interpretation?
Well, okay, if we're taking apart the side that, like, if we're taking out the fact that maybe Samuel Jackson just doesn't want to come back and play Mace Windu.
Oh, he does. He's begged.
But
he has begged.
What I'm saying is if you take that aspect out, whether he wants to or not, I think that he could have survived for sure, 100%. I mean, the way I kind of like what you said is he has aspects.
My boy was flung out a window. How could he have survived that? Okay. I just want your take. I legitimately want your take.
He was flung out a window, sure. However, you got space cars moving all around. This isn't the first time we've seen somebody hop out of a window or off of a high place and end up on like a mantle or a car or whatever, like a flying whatever. I mean, even if he was going to hit the ground, force. It's such a, I mean, I'm going to say it's such a cop-out that as long as he could use whatever power he has, and like if he wasn't knocked out the entire way down, whether he woke up mid-fall or whatever, he could have kind of used the force to get himself up. He could float himself. You know, there's so many different things he could have done. Which is why I personally believe that Mace had a way of surviving. I don't think it was just a one and done. I think what happened is Mace more than likely survived, and he said, hey, this is a lost cause. and he said screw it. And I'm not saying he went to the dark side or anything, but I'm saying I think he just said screw it and he went on to do his own thing, whether that be train more like younglings or if he just decided I want to live as just a regular person and abandon the ways.
That's interesting you say that. Before I get into my take, Jackson, what is your opinion here?
No one's really ever gone.
No one's ever really gone. Such a great quote. Yeah.
No, he's right. It's a very true statement.
They can do whatever they want. I don't really care. I mean, like, I'm going to watch it either way. That's cool if not. I like Samuel L. Jackson.
What was kind of your initial theory to if Mace was actually his arms or his hands were cut off, he gets force lightning out a window. What do you think, in your opinion, would have happened to Mace?
Boom, boom, boom.
Just dead.
Just bouncing off of like the highway cars.
You're right. Yeah. That's it.
Well, both of his hands weren't cut off though. It was just the hand with the lightsaber.
It was
correct?
just the one. Yeah, the one gets cut off.
So he still had an extra hand.
Right. So he could have lived with that extra hand, saved his life.
I don't know. I mean, like, he's a Jedi. Like, the man's probably has some kind of ability to at least keep himself alive. He may have took some cuts and bruises, and I mean, I don't think he'd be able to walk right up and walk away. Maybe someone helped him, but like, that's what I'm saying is like, there's definitely the chance of, hey, there's a dude laying in the street. We should probably help him.
Well, like I said, the Force is such a cop-out sometimes. Like, they could just end up being like,
right.
Oh, it was a subconscious thing, and the Force saved him. Like, boom, he just floated down, and now he's okay.
Yeah.
I just think of there being a Robot Chicken episode where, there's just some people chilling outside of like a food truck on Coruscant. And then Mace's body just
it's
splats
like the janitor.
in front of them.
Well, it's the janitor. The first one's with Darth Maul in the booth.
Yeah.
I gotta get that transfer to Coruscant. Mace Windu falls in front. I gotta get that transfer to the Death Star.
Dude, okay, actually, hot take. I feel like Robot Chicken needs to make new stuff with the sequels.
Yeah, I agree.
That'd be so good.
Like Matt, the radar technician, ×3.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Or the okay, I know it's kind of dumb and they've already done it, but the Kylo Ren skit, I think it was on SNL, where he's pretending to be like just a maintenance person.
That's that's
literally
what I'm saying.
Oh yeah. Okay, I'm off my mind. It's so late right now.
No, it's okay. Yeah, I haven't had my muffin yet, Matt. Yeah.
Kylo Ren, he's like 30 pounds soaking wet in that black dress.
I'm like a 90% sure Matt's Kylo Ren.
Oh, yeah, I saw Kylo Ren in the locker room. He had an 8-pack. It was really cool.
Yeah.
He let me hold his lightsaber once.
Man, this is going to be a long episode. I can already tell. But, with the death of Mace Windu, and we see Palpatine morph into what we know as Darth Sidious and the Emperor. And he gets this weird deformed look, and I think, in my opinion, this is just my personal opinion, he kind of looks silly compared to how he looks in the original trilogy, because he has this like really exaggerated look to really sell the.
It's got a really big forehead.
Yeah, he's got the Emperor look. Brandon, we'll start with you. What is kind of your hot take when it comes to Palpatine's transformation from Senator Palpatine or Chancellor Palpatine to Emperor Palpatine?
So I don't fully believe this was just a transformation. I do believe, because the whole reason why he kind of changed that way was because Mace was reflecting the lightning back at him, right? Am I wrong in saying that?
Yeah, you're good.
So with all that happening, I think it's really his look is also embodying his rage of like he sent so much power out and it got reflected back at him, and
that it literally deformed him.
Exactly. And it's
a product of his own creation.
Exactly. Yeah. So his own, like, being he created himself in that aspect. Like karma, what goes around comes around, and it finally got back at him. And I mean, I say that to the fullest because like Mace got blasted out a window and probably fell down. He got fucking thrown down a shaft in the Death Star. Like, end of the day, like I said, what goes around comes around.
He's like, falling. This is what Mace feels like.
Exactly. He's like, well, at least I'm not knocked out or some shit. But,
Right.
But see, okay, if he could survive, like,
I
Mace
could have lost an arm like that Mace Windu guy.
Exactly. But I think if you want to call it like a transformation in that aspect, I think it's fitting because most of the time when you see somebody who was a Jedi fallen to the dark side, unless they kind of held true to a lot of their beliefs, because like I said, Dooku, for instance, never really changed the way he looked, just the way his mentality was. But then if you start looking at all these other people, it's like they go from this like bright upbeat like light behind them, and then it's like bags under their eyes, kind of darker skin and like more pale.
Yeah.
So I think it just embodies like what a true Sith.
Like the yellow eyes with the red rim. And
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why I go back and say, like, I don't really think Dooku was a true Sith. I just think he was kind of like just a Force user in general who practiced both sides. But,
I mean, yeah.
But like we're not really talking about Dooku. Kind of going back to the transformation aspect. Like I said, he gets the yellow eyes, and you just fully see like officially, you know for a fact this is the Sith Lord, red lightsaber or not. Like he has the look, the embodiment, everything, the whole feel, like the eerie look, and like you just know.
Right. Yeah. Jackson, what about you? With the transformation of Palpatine to Emperor Palpatine.
It was his voice that always got me. I don't know why it sounds like that, but
or like why that was the moment he changed his voice.
Yeah, I kind of think it's the lightning, but like I don't know, it's the cool.
It altered his vocal cords. Yeah,
yeah, right.
I don't know. He kind of had that before, though. I mean, every time I think about it, like, do it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the voice is the one. That was the big transformation, is just immediately to his speech pattern changes, and it's much more Emperor Palpatine, rather, than the regal kind of persona he gave Chancellor Palpatine.
Right. Yeah. I think that, says a lot about the Emperor's plan, and like Brandon says, his hand's always on the steering wheel.
I know I've said that a lot. I'm so sorry.
I think that he chose that as his moment to. All right, I look scary. Might as well sound scary.
Full throttle, yeah.
Yeah, one of those kind of things.
I look like burnt leathery bacon.
Oh God, Anakin! You didn't tell me I looked this bad.
What the hell's an aluminum falcon? But we get this moment of Anakin finally being dubbed Darth Vader. It's almost weird how quickly Palpatine's just like, we shall call you Darth
Vader.
It's like he almost went through the options in his head, like Darth Twinkie. No, that doesn't work. Darth Sandwich. Nah, that doesn't work. Let's go Darth Vader.
He's like sitting there singing his ABCs, like, okay. Oh, V. I like V.
Yeah,
he's got like a list on his hand. He's just like reading it.
Rolls up his sleeve real quick, like,
do you
Excalibur,
like Darth
V.
Charlie?
How about Darth Cheese? Not Darth Cheese. All right,
Not
next.
Darth Cheese. All right, next one.
Darth Cantina. No, we can't do that.
Yeah, and that moment again is so iconic of him dubbing Anakin Darth Vader, but it leads into a very pivotal moment for the entire saga, and the prequel trilogy is the execution of Order 66, and how the clones are programmed to just follow the Emperor's orders.
Do it.
They're programmed to just like as soon as this order is brought out, we have to kill the Jedi. And it's not a thing that the Jedi one, are expecting because they're fighting alongside the Jedi, and two, it's not a thing the clones are even really prepared for. Especially we see that in Clone Wars with Rex, of how he, spoilers for Clone Wars Season 7, but how Rex is struggling with, him being ordered to execute this plot to destroy the Jedi, and him being like, but I can't. I can't do this.
Well, if you remember, they had chips. It wasn't it wasn't necessarily him struggling, because at first he did try to take out Ahsoka, but
it's that internal struggle of resisting that inevitable thing inside of him that he can't control.
I was reading something, I don't remember where I think it was an Instagram post, and it was pulled from some source of something, but it talked about how Ayla Secura's her battalion, her group, they're the ones that when they fired, they just kept firing. They just unloaded on her. And it's essentially what it talked about was that how when 66 happened and the clones were chipped, they knew they had to kill the Jedi, but they still, like, as clone brains, registered who the Jedi was and all of the memories. So in order to not make it as painful because they cared about the Jedi, they just kept firing to kill her faster and essentially just kill her as quick as possible. Just get it over with, and just all of them just had to keep firing just to let it end and let it be over with.
God, that's so dark and so sad.
Isn't that just horrible? That. Yeah.
Holy shit,
dude! Plo's bros took out Plo Koon, like.
In the way that Cody is, we all come to love Captain Cody. And the way he's able to just make that switch and immediately go after Kenobi.
Sure. Okay, hot take, I didn't really like Cody too much.
Really?
I'm a big Cody fan.
I was a Rex fan over anyone else.
If we're quick anecdote, Bad Batch theories, I think Rex is going to kill Cody in it.
Ooh. Does that mean you think Rex is showing up in Obi-Wan Kenobi?
I don't know. Maybe.
I think so, actually. I would venture to say that his adventure did not... I wouldn't really call it an adventure, I guess, because that sounds too upbeat and happy, but his, journey didn't end at that ship crash when Ahsoka and him escaped. I feel like there was still unfinished business.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Let's kind of get into the climax of the prequel trilogy, of this big Mustafar fight. And after, Anakin gets dubbed Darth Vader and he gets ordered to kill all these younglings, which is terrifying in itself, and we get the security tapes that Obi-Wan sees.
I saw him killing younglings.
Grogu, you've always been nice. Don't come to temple today.
Don't come to temple today. After that moment, which is so devastating, we see him go to Mustafar, basically ready to slaughter the Viceroy and all of the Trade Federation guys and the banking clan guys and just everybody who thinks they're important in the politics of the galaxy. And we end up on this great Mustafar lightsaber duel between Obi-Wan and Anakin, and the stakes are so god awfully high. And with Padme being pregnant, and Padme shows up, and they have this extraordinary moment of Anakin with this inner turmoil of he's been kind of brainwashed of this is my empire and I'm doing the right thing to save
your empire,
to save you, and Padme's like, I don't know this
guy. What
are
you talking about,
man? What are you talking about? Yeah. Brandon, what's kind of your interpretation of this moment before the big epic climactic duel happens?
I think at that moment he's lost all focus on trying to save anybody.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because he has just gotten so far in, and like I said, he was seduced to the dark side. I feel like there's a slight hint before they start the battle where if the right words were said, he could have been slightly tugged back into that like turmoil state where he's like in between both. But I think with the dialogue that was said, it just pushed him farther in, and it got to a point where, you know, he's bantering back and forth with Obi-Wan, and he's now Vader. And I think it just pisses him off that they keep calling him Anakin at this point. And it's just bringing him further and further back into the dark side. And just the fact that you can see him lose himself right there. I mean, he's no longer Anakin. You can see it 100%. He doesn't care. He force chokes Padme, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And it's like he does that, hurts the person he's trying to save.
Just
and then goes on to
power.
Exactly, and then he just goes on to fight his like only brotherly figure, like only family he could have.
It's crazy how clouded he immediately becomes by the dark side, and how he's so obsessed with trying to save Padme, and how obsessed he is with trying to make sure that Padme is all right and healthy. Yet when in the heat of the moment, he's the one who, you know, force chokes Padme, and
he's freaking out.
Abuses Padme.
You're all coming against me when everyone's like, whoa, whoa.
Yeah, he just takes everything so personally, especially in this moment in his life where he's been told he's this high and mighty power by the at this point the Emperor. But
I don't know how Obi-Wan can talk to Vader so sternly, like he isn't staring at his brother's face.
Yeah,
just like the sternness he holds in his voice when he speaks to Vader, that first encounter, just that, you know, your new empire, you know, it's not even reasoning anymore.
The delivery of those lines by Ewan McGregor is so raw and pure and so human. The way that he's like, your allegiance was to the Republic, to democracy.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, what the heck?
Get it through your head. Like, it's not hard.
What are you doing?
So I see that more as he probably feels like he let go of being the parental figure too early and becoming more of a brother figure, because he just reverts right back to what he knows used to work on being that parental figure. And he just, it's just stern. It's no longer a calm, like, I can talk to you as a brother. It's like, I have to put my foot down and I have to like force you to see what's wrong with this.
Yeah. And that, I would say he switches back to that brotherly when it's Anakin, you know, melting away, and Obi-Wan's crying to him, and, you know, you were my brother, you were the chosen one. It's just this, it's like, look at everything that you've destroyed. Like, you worked so hard for all of this. Like, how could you? Like, how could you, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. We're kind of going, you know, a little bit over time here, but kind of getting into our final / closing ish thoughts of Revenge of the Sith. You know, we have this moment of Anakin and Obi-Wan and their conflict, and then you get this Yoda Palpatine battle of the century with their duel. Do you think that Palpatine bested Yoda in this moment, where, you know, Yoda's just like, well, I have my moment, I might as well escape and go into exile? Do you think Palpatine's the one who bested Yoda in this moment, Brandon?
So, first off, let me say, I feel like this fight was completely unnecessary to the story.
I agree.
I wouldn't necessarily say anybody bested anyone, because Palpatine pretty much thought he killed Yoda, didn't he? And his reaction,
they don't ever find him. They're just kind of like, keep searching, and then Yoda escapes.
But that's what I'm saying, is he was so consumed with like, oh, I won, like I have to have won because I have the power, that he was pretty much dead set that Yoda was gone, or at least like he would never resurface. But if I had to pick a winner, I would say in the long run, when you watch the rest of the movies and read into things, Yoda was the winner. He ended up in an exiled place, but 1, he escaped with his life. 2, he escaped long enough to train the next generation and help pass on those ways. So I would say the winner of that fight was Yoda.
Jackson, what about you?
I wish this fight was more force eccentric. I wish it, and not just spinning Senate chairs and tossing them at each other. But I wish that's where that power was shown, was to show the strongest on both sides and what capabilities they could perform just with the power that they withheld. So I don't think anybody best. I think this fight kind of ends in a stalemate to where they both, because I mean, Yoda falls and Palpatine's hanging off of a Senate thing. Like Palpatine's losing his grip. Like anyone could, that's just I would say that's a stalemate. You got too far apart from each other that you can't see each other anymore. Call that the end of the fight. Yoda dipped.
Yeah, Yoda. It's a great example of how equally matched Yoda and Palpatine are, and how Yoda's force abilities and combat abilities are so weirdly in tune with Palpatine's abilities and force abilities, and we see that visually, especially in this big fight. I think it's so great. And we see Yoda in this vulnerable state at the end where when he falls off and he finally lands, he's like, this is my chance to get out of here.
Yeah,
he knows that he won't be able to defeat Palpatine here. And then, eventually in the movie, we have this meeting on the famous Tantive 4 with Obi-Wan and Yoda, and Obi-Wan and Yoda have just gone through these, battles of the century, with Obi-Wan letting go of Anakin, who he thought was dead, in the lava on Mustafar, and Yoda, who, barely made it out of that fight with Palpatine. And, it's just a desperate hour for the Jedi in general, especially for the survival of the Republic the Republic / the Rebellion. And how did you react to, Yoda revealing that Qui-Gon's alive, he's out there in the spirit of the Force, and Obi-Wan still has a lot of training to give Obi-Wan? Brandon, what did you think about that whole revelation?
So I thought that was pretty big, to the fact of just the survival of the Jedi Order.
Yeah.
I mean, if it was just basically white or black, if you kept looking at it like that and that there was no gray lining there, but there is gray lining at the fact that if you're trained enough and you're skillful enough in the Force, that you can basically keep your will alive enough to keep training. And I mean, by that in itself is basically saying, even if the last Jedi dies, there will always be more, because you can appear to Force-sensitive people and get that training in. And I just think that was so big at the fact that you no longer... I wouldn't say death has no consequence, but I would say you can let go of your attachment to your own life and officially pull yourself to the big picture of the Force.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, Jackson, do you have anything to add on to that?
I think kind of turning that same scene on a different note, talking more about the twins and just kind of the Jedi and Bail Organa just kind of establishing this little plan of, we need to give it time. Let's let things kind of simmer down, and we may have to sit in hiding for a little bit. Bail not as much, because he held a Senate seat. His position of kind of inner workings, at least saving the day, weren't as public yet. So I think this scene's it's very important, especially when kind of seeing the next 20 years and just where the galaxy is shaped and where these people shape. It's everyone is understanding in that moment how big of a mission, how long of a mission this is going to be, how this is the mission to save the Jedi Order, and it's going to be the one for probably the rest of your life. Obi-Wan, literally, you know.
Well, and kind of elaborating on Senator Organa, pronunciation's off on me right now.
It's all right. It's regional.
But there's a deleted scene actually that shows him, and I think it's called like Seeds of Rebellion or something. And it basically shows him like planting those like first seeds of starting the rebellion up.
Yeah.
And keeping everything alive.
And we see things like that in Rogue One too. With Bail Organa, and how he's always kept Obi-Wan in the loop, which I hope to see in the Kenobi series. I hope to see some communication between Kenobi and Organa, and also how he's so dependent on Leia and how she's so vital to the survival of the rebellion and the survival of good in the galaxy. Which is so great. Kind of leading into our kind of last point here, the birth of Luke and Leia along with the death of Padme. It's such a bittersweet moment of we finally get the birth of Anakin's children, which we've always known and loved with the original trilogy with Luke and Leia and the revelation of their siblings, but also this very kind of sour undertone of Padme dying and the entire planet of Naboo mourning for Padme, and how, you know, at the end of this big clone war, there is such a dire casualty which comes with Padme and a lot of the characters that end up dying in this movie, which is so heartbreaking in a lot of ways. What do you kind of gather from you know, a lot of the sacrifices the Jedi have to make in this movie, Brandon?
Well, so getting specific, you know, the death of Padme was kind of huge. I mean, I know a lot of people might see her as a very minuscule character, but at the end of the day, every fight she ever had was towards democracy and peace. I mean, when you look at the Clone Wars, like, I don't want to spoil anything if people haven't watched it, but there's a whole entire thing where she has friends on the Separatist side. Yeah. And it's not about a war, it's about making peace and doing the right thing. And all the sacrifices that have been made up until this point, the Seeds of Rebellion was exactly Leia and Luke. I mean, those were the major components. I mean, you think about wondering when, like, flowers will bloom, like, that was the biggest thing, and everything else was just the fertilizer and soil and sunlight to nurture these, like, plants that need to grow. And
that's a great metaphor. Yeah.
And that's at least how I view it, is all those sacrifices were the materials to keep this plant alive.
Yeah. I really love that metaphor of, you know, Padme is the foundation of what the rebellion ends up being. And I love that a lot. Jackson, what about you? What's kind of your interpretation of, you know, the end of Padme and her era of the Senate and the politics in Star Wars?
Well, I think too a lot more is when Padme died, Padme lost her will to live because Anakin died, because Anakin was gone. She felt no purpose of continuing herself if Anakin wasn't going to be there. And while that may be kind of a selfish move to claim, you know, you can say Anakin and Padme's souls died and moved on to Luke and Leia. and they became the people that, I think that Padme and Anakin would have raised them to be regardless. That they almost that Padme at least had this faith in her two just born children that they are going to be good people regardless. Which makes it a little more sad that at the same time Darth Vader is being born, that Darth Vader is on the other side, literally forming himself into this cage in this locked metal shell that he will contain for the rest of his life, that just eats his anger and his sadness and just everything that he fought so hard to prevent happened. And he's just felt like he's lost nothing. Whereas it's almost like, Padme's one of her final words to Obi-Wan is there's still good in him.
Yeah.
She leaves off with hope, and just exactly the baseline and the seeds of the rebellion is, hope is the biggest thing the rebellion can use to survive. And that's exactly what Padme died with.
And I think that's a great theme you bring up, is the theme of a spark of hope. And no matter how dark times get, and no matter how dark the world gets, there is something that you can achieve. There's something that you can work to achieve, and something that no matter how dark things get, there is a light side to something.
Yeah.
And I think that that says a lot about Padme as a character. She's always been able to find solutions to dark moments, or she's always been able to, find something good in Anakin, no matter how much he doesn't see it. And that is such a great point to realize in Padme's character, especially, is the way she's able to view the galaxy in general. But Padme gives birth. Unfortunately, she has this very tragic death, and Luke and Leia are in the hands of Obi-Wan, and he has to kind of decide what is the right course of action to do with these children. And he decides that Luke goes with, Anakin's kind of like stepson-ish kind of weird thing with Owen and Beru on Tatooine. And then we get Leia with obviously the best choice of Bail Organa and his wife. Brandon, what is your kind of thoughts on the ending of this movie and how it ties in to A New Hope?
So, like I said previously, everything that's happened were the materials and components that needed to happen to make everything, to form and create everything that's happening now. So if you're looking at from there to A New Hope, they had to have sat there and said, well, if Leia's the daughter of Padme, obviously she's got to have some kind of connection to wanting peace and being on a political side, but still being a fighter. And also being Anakin's child. Again, great warrior. She has to be a fighter, as well as Luke being a fighter. So knowing that Luke is Anakin and Padme's son, and Leia is Anakin and Padme's daughter, I think the way this was kind of set up, and especially splitting them, was one, if one was found out, you would still have another seed to grow and bloom. And if the other, it's vice versa, it works the same way. There was no way they were going to find both, though. And just the way they basically brought these people up and nurtured them, it was kind of a reflection of Anakin and Padme. Leia was like Padme, being put into royalty and being put in that political position, whereas Anakin, although not a slave, grew up on Tatooine, doing hard labor and doing all this stuff. So it was like Can
you imagine if they switched that?
Oh, I know. Honestly, I would love to see a story like that where they switch those two. But
Leia could do it, but Luke couldn't.
No, for sure. Dude, he'd be such an awkward politician. But just getting back into it, it's it's almost like a reincarnation if you think about it. Like and it's kind of like forcing a reincarnation or like forcing a redo of like, here's the flower that we had, it wilted, which is Anakin and Padme, like both of them wilted, and now you have these seeds though that survived, and we can grow them up the same way and see if they bloom this time.
And that's a great analogy to, the title of episode 4 is A New Hope, which I think your point of that metaphor of the plants and how Anakin and Padme have wilted, but they have these seeds that will eventually grow to be these beautiful, strong flowers. That is such a great way to look at A New Hope and how Luke and Leia are essentially the new hope for the galaxy, and they have a fresh start and a fresh view on the galaxy, which is super important.
And my boy R2-D2 ride or die coming back.
Yeah. But kind of we're really running out of time. We're running a little longer than usual here, but we'll go into, we kind of hit all the main points of the movie. But when it comes to quotes of this movie, what are some of the standout quotes in this movie that you really love? Just kind of rapid fire quickly. What are some of the quotes that stand out to you?
Biggest one to me is always Obi-Wan's, my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy. That's a big one for me.
Yeah. I love another happy landing.
Another happy landing.
Hello there.
Hello there.
General Kenobi.
So uncivilized.
Yeah.
Just Anakin's just stating like, I trust R2-D2.
Did I say anything? I didn't say anything.
And that says a lot about their dynamic in this movie too.
Yeah.
Just like,
their fun little
building
banter.
Building off of their chemistry from the Clone Wars and all that, and working together.
Do it.
Yeah.
I think a terrific line is, so this is how democracy ends, in a thunderous applause.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of Padme's realization of, we're all screwed.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Not to get political, but that says a lot about the world today.
I agree.
But, what were you saying, Brandon?
You're entirely right. Oh, I was just going to say another big line that sticks out to me is, well, if you're not with me, then you're against me.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's so powerful, though, because it's almost like Anakin is almost giving Obi-Wan the chance to go to the dark side with him. I mean, think about it. He's straight up telling him, like, hey, man, if you're with me, we can partner up and we can be together.
It's almost like Anakin is offended that Obi-Wan isn't on board with them.
Well, he doesn't want to be alone. I mean, that's
exactly.
He thinks Padme's turned against him, so he's going to try and convince Obi-Wan to join him. At least someone will rule the galaxy with him.
Right.
The good.
And then you get the great Palpatine. I am the Senate.
Not yet.
Right. Yeah.
He's too dangerous to be left alive.
Yeah. And this is such a quotable movie. A lot of great quotes. But
okay.
What's up, Brandon?
I'm so sorry. I was going to say, I know we're running out of time, but technically, Revenge of the Sith is a PG-13 movie, which allows them one cuss word. Where would you put it?
Ooh. Mace Windu saying motherfucker.
Yeah, but like, where? Give me the line. Give me the line right now.
He's a Sith Lord, motherfucker.
It seems in your anger you killed her. Fuck.
I feel like mine would just have to be, it's treason then, bitch.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
All of the yes.
I had to ask.
It's when Kit Fisto gets killed.
Yeah. But kind of closing out, we didn't really have time to get into the musical themes or the emotional themes of this movie, which I'm sure we'll get into at another point in time. But Brandon, what are kind of your closing thoughts on Revenge of the Sith? What do you think of this movie overall? and how do you carry the lessons that you learned from this movie forward onto life?
So overall, absolutely amazing film. It captured so many amazing moments, and just the cinematography of everything, of how they portrayed it and directed it. I mean, like I said before, showing how the entire time Palpatine knew what was going on, everything was orchestrated. I mean, you can even see the last point that he knew when he could finally let go of the steering wheel was when he told Vader and lied to Vader about how he killed her in his anger. But it just, the entire thing to me, like the takeaway for me is that if you stick true to your beliefs and who you are as a person, that nothing can faze you. And if you form your own morals for yourself before letting somebody form those for you, more good can happen than bad.
Wonderful. Jackson, what about you?
This movie's a wild ride for me. I like this movie a lot just for the fun I have with it, while it's also just an excellent character drama. It's an excellent, I love just kind of studying Anakin's just fall throughout this entire movie from the beginning. And you can really just kind of isolate it through this movie, because
this movie is basically the fall of Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah. And like, we've seen the turmoil he's had before. We kind of understand that he's a pretty kind of naturally angry person, but in this one, it's very personal to him. Most of at least early on in the movie, he's pretty just kind of broken up with how he feels, with the Jedi Council and just with Palpatine and all that. And he's just kind of at this point to where it's this sadness, and he just carries that, and it really breaks him up. And, I just think that character arc that he goes through that eventually turns him into this, into Darth Vader, that then turns him into this shell of a person, literally, in this black suit. Like, it's heartbreaking. It's just absolutely heartbreaking. And it breaks my heart thinking about Anakin Skywalker all the time. That boy did not deserve it.
Yeah. I've always said it's the tragedy of Darth Vader. And, just the arc of being the slave boy on Tatooine into being so broken and so hurt.
But just this, he was also just this good natured, like this person who learned to be humble with what he had, but
with good intentions,
and cared so much, just that it was his only downfall. It's what ruined him. And it's just heartbreaking to see.
And I think that's that great dynamic we all love, is that we expect Vader to be this ruthless villain who's always this, vicious, slaughtering dude, when in reality, he just wanted his life. He just wanted his wife to live, and he wanted to be able to see the birth of his child, and he couldn't do that, and he. To his own expense, he was unable to fulfill what was meant to happen. And he, I think in the end, if we're talking the arc of Vader, in the end, he was able to bring balance to the Force. And he was, eventually able to fulfill his prophecy, or the prophecy that was brought upon him as a child.
100%.
But yeah, just the tragedy that is Anakin Skywalker is something that is so pivotal to the Skywalker saga, and why Skywalkers themselves have the rep they have. It's just so it's so moving to me, and the journey Anakin goes through in the entire saga is also very moving. Even down to the Rise of Skywalker.
You could almost call this entire thing, if you veer away from the Star Wars name, you could almost just call it Skywalker Saga.
Yeah, I mean that's what it's been deemed by Disney. Exactly. Yeah, for sure. Well, Brandon, do you have any other closing thoughts before we get out of here for today?
Off the top of my head, not really. I mean, like I said, this is an absolutely amazing movie. And if you haven't already seen it, or if you have seen it and you just don't think it's that good, go back, watch it, and after listening to this, just keep an open mind when you watch it. And then
Absolutely.
you kind of get your own process of everything. Don't just look at it and be like, oh, this is just a meme, like
right.
haha, it's funny, or this sucks. Like, form your own opinion.
Jackson, what about you?
Ooh-bah. Ooh-bah.
Yes, we're finally there. We're finally to the Ooh-bah movie.
No, I got nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've covered almost everything there is to cover. But let's bring everybody out. We've had a great conversation. Brandon, where can they find you and your people on the social medias?
So you can find me and my people on Twitter at notsoextremeGA1. You can also find us on Instagram at notsoextremegaming. You can find my personal on Twitter at Brandon Sears 555 and me on Instagram at Brandon Sears 45.
And Brandon, can you kind of walk us through what Not So Extreme Gaming is and what you guys do?
So Not So Extreme Gaming is pretty much a comedy channel, if anything. It is this whole entire show where we play games and have great conversation. It's like a podcast with visuals of just...
Love it.
We don't necessarily talk about what the game is going on. Like, we still do, and we get insight on it. But we crack jokes. We talk about serious things. We talk about, like, our personal... stories and just stories we've heard. It just the whole 9 yards, just anything we can think of goes into it. And they're always about like we try to make them 10 to 15 minutes. Sometimes they go to like 10 to 20 minute episodes, but that's pretty much what we do.
50-minute episodes like mine
that's
and your.
different. This was special. That was absolutely special to me. You were my first guest and I'm so happy it was you.
Yeah, make sure if you guys have not seen the episode with me and Brandon playing Lego Star Wars, make sure you check out Not So Extreme Gaming on YouTube, and you can watch us suck at Lego Star Wars while also beating the Phantom Menace. Jackson, where can they find you?
You can find me on my Twitter at QuacksonScaline. That's QUACKSON, and scaling like the triangle. And then you can follow my photography Instagram at Deleen_photography. Deleen spelled DALEEN. Braydon, what about you?
As always, you can find me on Instagram at braydonleadbetter and on Twitter at braydathlon. And guys, we cannot stress this enough. We stress this every episode, but it is that important. Please leave that rating, leave that review on our Apple Podcast. Follow us on Spotify. Do whatever you got to do to support the show.
Do it. This is coming from me.
Rate us 5 stars because Brandon said so. And also, you know, every Thursday we have our main news show where me and Jackson talk about all the latest and greatest Star Wars news.
Or Marvel, if it's April 1st.
If it's April 1st, we're talking about Marvel. But this past Thursday was a doozy. We had a lot of Star Wars news to cover. So, and we did have some questions. So if you have questions about Star Wars, literally anything, Legends, prequels, sequels, original trilogy, animated, Clone Wars, TV show, whatever, we will be answering your questions. Whatever gets sent in to us, we talk about. So please send those in. And as always, next week we will be having another Imperial Cantina where we talk about The Force Awakens. We're diving into the sequel trilogy now. So everybody get ready for that. But if Jackson and Brandon don't have anything else...
I got nothing.
Brandon?
Nope. I'm blank.
All right. Well, if we can bring everybody out with a ooh-bah, ooh-bah, ooh-bah.
Oh, my God.
Well, thank you. Well, until next week, and you want to see us do some news, and you have some Imperial Cantina time with these 2.5-hour episodes, please do. But until then, may the Force be with you.
Yes, may the Force be with you.
Thank you, Brandon. Okay, bye.
Bye.